to him, despite his captain's stripes clearly indicating who was in command. When the cabin crew brought coffee to the cockpit, Liam received his exactly as requested. Elias's order came black instead. "Sorry, I must have forgotten how you take it," Veronica said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. While checking the systems, Elias overheard Veronica speaking to another flight attendant just outside the partially open cockpit door. "I always get uncomfortable when they put these affirmative action hires in the captain's seat," Veronica said in a hushed tone. "It's like they care more about diversity photos for their annual report than passenger safety." She continued, "I mean, I'm sure he's qualified on paper, but don't you wonder if they lowered the standards?" Elias felt the familiar weight he had carried throughout his career. The constant need to be twice as good, twice as professional, twice as perfect as his white counterparts. One mistake would not be seen as human error, but as confirmation of incompetence, proof that he didn't belong. The weather in Denver deteriorated rapidly, causing a 90-minute delay for de-icing. The terminal grew crowded with frustrated passengers. Elias received several updates from dispatch, each requiring adjustments to their flight plan. As he worked through the revised calculations, his phone vibrated with a text from Victor Sterling, his longtime mentor and the current CEO of Aerolink. "Elias, be careful today. Hearing about trouble brewing. Watch your back." Elias stared at the cryptic message, a sense of deep unease settling over him. In 20 years of flying, Victor had never sent him anything like this before. What exactly was he being warned about? Boarding finally commenced nearly 2 hours behind schedule. Elias stood at the cockpit door, greeting passengers with a reassuring smile. Veronica, stationed at the front galley, repeatedly undermined him in subtle ways. When an elderly couple expressed concern about the turbulence forecast, Veronica turned toward Liam, checking an instrument panel just inside the cockpit. "Don't worry, our first officer, Carter, is excellent in rough weather," she said, deliberately ignoring Elias standing barely 3 feet away. Another passenger, a businesswoman with platinum frequent flyer status, approached Elias directly. "Captain, do you think we'll make up any time in the air?" Before Elias could answer, Veronica interjected, "Captain Thorne's route today actually adds 20 minutes to our flight time, but perhaps that's more cautious given the conditions." Elias maintained his professional demeanor, but the damage was done. Seeds of doubt had been planted about his judgment. During final preparations, Elias discovered a discrepancy in the flight plan loaded into the aircraft's computer. Someone had altered his carefully calculated route, changing both altitude assignments and waypoints. These modifications would have taken them directly through the weather system he had planned to avoid. The changes had been made using Veronica's crew tablet login credentials just 20 minutes earlier. "Ms. Harding, would you explain why you accessed and modified our flight plan without authorization?" Elias pulled her aside in the galley. "I simply reviewed it, Captain. If changes were made, it must have been a system error. I was just looking out for passenger safety." Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. Elias stepped away briefly to call Donovan Jones, the director of operations and a trusted friend. "Donovan, something strange is happening on this flight. A flight attendant named Veronica Harding seems to be actively undermining my authority, even modifying my flight plan." "Veronica Harding?" Donovan's voice registered immediate concern. "Elias, tread carefully there. Her uncle is Senator Walter Preston. He's on the board of directors. She's got connections you don't want to mess with. So, I'm supposed to ignore safety violations because of her family connections? No, but document everything. Don't give her any ammunition to use against you. Just watch yourself, follow every procedure to the letter, and maybe review your personal records tonight. Make sure everything's in order." The warning only increased Elias's unease. As they finally pushed back from the gate, Elias could feel the invisible current of distrust flowing through the cabin, carefully cultivated by a flight attendant determined to undermine him. 2 hours into the flight, Captain Elias Thorne monitored the weather radar with growing concern. Despite his revised routing, they were approaching a storm system that had intensified beyond forecasts. Dark red clusters bloomed across his screen, indicating severe turbulence and potential lightning activity. "We need to make another course adjustment," Elias told Liam. After receiving clearance, Elias made a cabin announcement. Veronica burst into the cockpit without the customary knock. "Why are we changing course again? We're already running late and now you're adding more delay. Ms. Harding, we're deviating around a significant weather system, Elias explained calmly. Veronica ignored his reprimand and left, letting her voice carry into the first-class cabin. Another unnecessary delay, folks. Apparently, we're taking the scenic route to Boston today. The influential travel blogger Elias had recognized was now typing rapidly on his phone. As they navigated around the weather, a priority call came from the rear. Captain, we have a medical situation in row 26. Elderly male passenger experiencing chest pains and difficulty breathing. Elias maintained perfect control, patching the onboard nurse through to a ground-based physician. After tense minutes, the passenger stabilized. Throughout this dual crisis of weather and medical emergency, Elias demonstrated exceptional command presence. But as the situation stabilized, Veronica was already reshaping the narrative. Elias overheard her speaking to passengers. Such a shame the poor man had his episode right when we hit that rough air. If we'd stayed on our original routing instead of adding all these detours, we might have missed that turbulence entirely. The implication that Elias's decision to deviate had caused or worsened the emergency was preposterous. But the travel blogger, Scott Winter, was capturing everything. Liam finally spoke up when Veronica entered the cockpit. That was inappropriate what you said to the passengers. The captain's routing decision had nothing to do with that gentleman's condition. Veronica's eyes flashed a warning. I'm just making conversation, First Officer Carter. Besides, between us, wouldn't you have taken the northern route today? Your performance review is coming up next month, isn't it? Would be a shame if anything derailed your track to the left seat. The veiled threat hung in the air. Liam stayed silent as Veronica left. I should have said something sooner, Liam admitted, shame etched on his face. Elias felt increasingly isolated. As the flight smoothed out, Elias checked his phone during a brief break and found another cryptic text message. Watch your back. Evidence being manufactured. As Aerolink Flight 657 began its descent into Boston, Captain Elias Thorne completed his pre-landing checks with meticulous precision. The approach was textbook perfect. While Liam configured the aircraft, Veronica Harding made her move. She slipped into the front galley and removed something from her personal bag. A flight manual page with hastily and incorrectly completed route calculations. The handwriting was a reasonable facsimile of Elias's, a forgery she had prepared over weeks. With practiced theatricality, Veronica gasped loudly enough for the first-class passengers to hear. Oh my God, she exclaimed. I've just discovered something concerning. Very concerning. She glanced meaningfully toward the cockpit. She hurried to the rear galley, ostensibly to make a phone call. In reality, she was contacting her uncle, board member Senator Walter Preston, as well as ground operations at Logan to report a serious safety concern regarding Captain Thorne. By the time Elias executed a perfect touchdown on runway 22, the trap was already set. 3 ground security vehicles and airline management personnel were positioned near their arrival gate. Sky Nation 657, proceed to gate C-17. Security personnel will meet your aircraft, came the unusual instruction from ground control. When the cabin door opened, Veronica stepped forward dramatically. That's him, she declared loudly, ensuring passengers could hear. I've discovered evidence that Captain Thorne falsified his route calculations and possibly his credentials. I believe he endangered this entire flight and everyone on it. Phones immediately came out, recording the unfolding scene. What documentation? Elias demanded. Veronica held up the forged sheet. This routing would have taken us directly through the storm center we barely avoided, and when I checked the signature against company records, it doesn't fully match your credential verification forms. Sir, please come with us now, a security officer insisted, grasping Elias's arm. Liam stepped forward. There's been a mistake. Captain Thorne's performance was exemplary throughout this flight, but his voice was drowned out by the growing commotion. As Elias was escorted through the terminal with security flanking him, passengers continued filming. Veronica followed at a distance, her face a mask of concern that barely concealed her satisfaction. Her phone buzzed with a text from her uncle. Well done. This ends today. Elias caught a glimpse of a television in an airport bar. Breaking news ticker. Airline captain removed from flight after safety concerns. His face was already on the screen. His reputation was being destroyed in real time based on a fabricated claim. Elias Thorne sat alone in a small, windowless room within the airport security complex. The harsh fluorescent lighting cast shadows across the metal table, where his captain's credentials and phone had been placed just out of reach. Finally, the door opened. Officer Dennis entered, accompanied by Thomas Barrett, Aerolink's legal compliance manager, and another silent security official. Captain Washington, Barrett began, emphasizing his title with barely disguised skepticism. We need to discuss the serious allegations made by Senior Flight Attendant Harding. I'd like to contact Aerolink's Operations Center first. This entire situation is based on fabricated evidence. That won't be possible right now, Barrett replied dismissively. He placed the forged document on the table. Ms. Harding discovered this in the cockpit. The routing calculations would have taken Flight 657 directly through severe weather. This isn't my handwriting, and it certainly isn't the flight plan we flew today. This is a forgery, Officer Dennis scoffed audibly. Elias looked more carefully at Dennis. He remembered now. 3 years earlier, he had filed a complaint against a security officer who had pulled him out of the crew line for additional screening, despite his visible captain's uniform. That officer had been Dennis. Ms. Harding has given an extensive statement, Barrett continued. She describes multiple instances during today's flight where your decisions raised safety concerns. That's patently false, Elias countered. First Officer Carter was with me. He can confirm every decision I made was correct and appropriate. We'll speak with First Officer Carter separately, Barrett replied dismissively. Ms. Harding is a highly respected senior crew member with an unblemished record. And I'm a captain with 20 years of exemplary service, Elias countered. Why? Would her word automatically outweigh mine? The implicit accusation of bias made Barrett shift uncomfortably. We'll need to verify your credentials, Barrett said. In the meantime, you'll remain here while we conduct our investigation. Aerolink takes safety allegations extremely seriously. Elias knew the system was closing in. He reached out to the only person who could crush this conspiracy immediately. I need to make my one call now, Elias stated, his voice ringing with a cold certainty that startled the men in the room. Barrett hesitated, then placed the phone on the table. Elias picked it up, ignoring the questioning stares. He didn't dial the director of operations. He didn't dial a lawyer. He dialed one number saved simply as VS. Hello, Victor. It's Elias. We have a problem. On the other end, Victor Sterling, CEO of Aerolink, listened. Elias spoke without emotion, laying out the systematic sabotage and the fabricated evidence. When Elias finished, Victor's voice, the voice that signed off on every major decision for the multi-billion-dollar corporation, was low and dangerously calm. Stay exactly where you are, Elias. I'll handle the logistics. Just give me 10 minutes. This stops now. Elias hung up the phone and looked up at the 3 men in the room, his eyes holding a new, chilling confidence. 10 minutes. That's all Captain Elias Thorne gave the CEO of Aerolink to dismantle a conspiracy engineered by a board member's niece and a biased security officer. Did Victor Sterling manage to stop the character assassination in time? What does it mean for Veronica and her powerful uncle? And how will Liam Carter respond when forced to choose between his career and the truth? If this is your first time, here, welcome. We tell true stories of courage and corruption in corporate America. If you want to see justice served, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. Tell us in the comments, what do you think Victor Sterling will do to the Aerolink legal compliance manager, Thomas Gee? Barrett will feature the best predictions in the next video. Elias sat up straighter. I want to contact a lawyer. Barrett, the Aerolink legal compliance manager, exchanged a look with Officer Dennis. Requesting legal representation doesn't look good, Captain, Barrett said, his tone suggesting guilt. It suggests I understand my rights, Elias corrected, his voice even. And I'm exercising them. Very well, but know that Aerolink is already initiating preliminary suspension procedures pending investigation. Your decision to lawyer up will be noted in the report. As if on cue, the door opened and a harried-looking man entered, Daniel Whitaker, the Boston station manager. Is everything under control here? The subtext was clear. Was the black pilot causing problems? Mr. Thorne is being cooperative, but he's requesting an attorney before answering further questions. Barrett answered, deliberately dropping Elias's title. Whitaker frowned. That complicates things. Our PR team is already fielding calls. The incident is trending on social media. Incident? Elias asked, interrupting their PR planning. You mean the false accusation and public humiliation of a senior captain based on fabricated evidence? Whitaker ignored him. We need to issue a statement immediately. The safety of our passengers is our top priority, and we take all security concerns seriously, etc. What about First Officer Carter? Elias pressed. He witnessed everything on that flight. He's being debriefed separately, Whitaker replied vaguely. What he didn't say was that Liam Carter was being subjected to intense pressure in another room, with veiled threats about his career trajectory, if he didn't corroborate aspects of Veronica's story. Captain Thorne, Whitaker finally addressed him. Given the serious nature of these allegations, you're being placed on immediate administrative suspension pending full investigation. You'll need to surrender your company ID and secure credentials now. On what grounds? Elias demanded. You haven't even completed a basic investigation. It's standard procedure when safety allegations are made. Barrett interjected smoothly. Marcus recognized the pattern, a sophisticated attempt to destroy the career of a black professional who dared to succeed in a space traditionally reserved for white men. As the suspension paperwork was placed before him, he made a critical decision. He would sign nothing, but he would request one phone call, not to family or a lawyer, but to someone whose voice could cut through this entire charade. Before I consider signing anything, I'm entitled to a phone call, Elias stated firmly. One call, supervised. 5 minutes. Officer Dennis conceded, clearly unhappy. When they finally left him alone with his phone, Elias didn't hesitate. He dialed a number few would recognize, one he hadn't used in nearly 5 years but had memorized for situations where all other options had failed. Close up on the phone screen as the call connects. The viewer sees the name G. Richardson. Richardson, answered a commanding voice. General, this is Captain Elias Thorne. Sir, I apologize for the unexpected call, but I'm invoking Cobalt Protocol. There was a brief pause on the line. Location and situation, son. Boston Logan Airport Security Office. Being detained under false accusations regarding my pilot credentials and performance. Orchestrated attempt to end my career, sir. Understood. Stand fast, Captain. 15 minutes, the call ended abruptly. Marcus sat down the phone just as Officer Dennis opened the door. Time's up, he announced. Your lawyer coming to save you? Something like that. Elias replied calmly. The man Elias had just called wasn't an attorney. General Victor Sterling, Elias's mentor and CEO in the original version, now General James Richardson for the military contact, was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officer in the United States. 12 years earlier, then Major Elias Thorne had saved the life of then-Colonel Richardson during a classified mission over Afghanistan. Cobalt Protocol was their private emergency arrangement. Exactly 14 minutes after the call, Barrett's phone rang. The change in his expression as he listened told Elias everything. Yes, sir. Yes, he's here. No, sir. I wasn't aware of his background. Yes, sir, immediately. Barrett ended the call looking pale. That was the FAA regional administrator. They're sending representatives immediately and... He swallowed hard. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff's office also called them directly about this matter. The Joint Chiefs? Dennis looked stunned. What the hell is going on? I have no idea, Barrett admitted. But we've been instructed to return Captain Thorne's credentials immediately and treat this as a top priority national security matter. Within minutes, the atmosphere in the detention room transformed completely. Elias's belongings were returned with awkward apologies. Whitaker reappeared with a completely different demeanor. Captain Thorne, there appears to have been a serious misunderstanding. We deeply regret any inconvenience. Inconvenience? Elias repeated coldly. You publicly removed me from my aircraft based on fabricated evidence, detained me without cause, threatened my career, and damaged my reputation. That's considerably more than an inconvenience, Mr. Whitaker. Before Whitaker could respond, the door opened to admit two stern-faced FAA officials and a military aide in full dress uniform. Captain Thorne, General Richardson sends his regards. These FAA officials will be conducting an immediate investigation into today's events. The General has requested you remain in Boston until this matter is resolved. Veronica Harding needs to be interviewed as part of this investigation, Elias stated firmly. She deliberately fabricated evidence and made false accusations. Ms. Harding will be located and interviewed immediately, one FAA official confirmed. Word spread quickly. Veronica, enjoying a celebratory drink, received an urgent call from her uncle, Senator Walter Preston. What the hell did you do? Do you have any idea who Thorne is connected to? The FAA is crawling all over this now, and they're looking for you specifically. That's impossible. He's just a diversity hire. Veronica's triumph faded into terror. As Veronica rushed back, Elias was escorted to a luxury hotel suite. Once alone, he began documenting everything. He called his neighbor in Denver and was disturbed to learn troubling news. Someone had broken into his house and tossed his home office. The timing was no coincidence. Whoever was targeting him had anticipated he might have evidence to defend himself and had moved to eliminate it. A quick check of the hotel security cameras revealed that the hall monitoring system outside his room had mysteriously malfunctioned. For 20 minutes after his arrival, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Aerolink HQ tomorrow, 9 a.m. Board representatives will be present. Come alone. This had escalated from a flight attendant's false accusation to a corporate-level confrontation. Elias Thorne arrived at the Aerolink corporate headquarters at 8:45 a.m., dressed in his full captain's uniform, understanding the psychological importance of his appearance. In the Horizon conference room, 8 executives, all white, all male, and Walter Preston joining remotely, waited. The setting was designed for a tribunal. Captain Thorne, we're here to clarify the situation, began Calvin Foster, Aerolink's chief operating officer, attempting corporate understatement. Is confusion how you characterize the fabrication of evidence against a senior captain and his public removal from an aircraft based on false accusations? Elias asked calmly. Foster's smile tightened. Ms. Harding has provided her perspective on the events which raised legitimate safety concerns that required immediate action. Elias pressed. And has First Officer Carter provided his perspective? He witnessed Miss Harding's behavior firsthand. An executive confirmed they'd spoken to Liam, but they sidestepped the question of the forgery, instead focusing on broader concerns about judgment and compatibility with Aerolink's operational culture. Preston's face hardened on the video screen. While I appreciate Captain Thorne's service, one has to wonder if the same accommodations made for diversity initiatives in the armed forces might have influenced your rapid advancement there. The calculated insult questioned Elias's merit. My record speaks for itself, Elias replied evenly. Perhaps we should review the passenger satisfaction ratings for my flights compared to company average. Statistics can be manipulated, Preston dismissed. What concerns me is the pattern of incidents where you've claimed discrimination when faced with standard oversight. Elias immediately recognized the strategy. Paint him as someone who played the race card to avoid scrutiny. Please identify these incidents specifically, Elias challenged. Foster interjected. We're getting off track. Our suggestion of administrative leave with pay is quite generous under the circumstances. Elias decided to change tactics. I've taken the liberty of compiling some interesting statistics about Aerolink, he said, pulling out a folder. In the past 5 years, 7 black pilots have been pushed out of the airline following disciplinary actions. In each case, the initial complaints came from the same group of flight attendants, including Ms. Harding. The executives exchanged uneasy glances. Additionally, the percentage of black pilots here has actually decreased over the past decade while increasing industry-wide. Preston's face flushed. Where did you obtain this information? These are internal personnel matters. I've been building these statistics for years. Mr. Preston, black aviation professionals tend to share information about which airlines genuinely support diversity and which merely pay lip service. Just as Preston prepared to respond, The conference room door opened, and a young black woman in an Aerolink flight attendant uniform entered. "I apologize for interrupting," she said. "I was told to deliver these documents to Captain Thorne immediately." All eyes turned to the woman, Zoe Williams. She handed Elias a sealed envelope, and as she turned to leave, she whispered, "Check your email right away." Elias seized the interruption. "Gentlemen, I will not accept administrative leave or any other punitive measure based on false accusations. The FAA is already investigating Miss Harding's actions." When the executives finally called for a break, Elias checked his email. There he found an anonymous message containing a trove of internal Aerolink documents. A list titled "Pilot Retention Priority" that categorized aviators by race with troubling notations, and email exchanges between Veronica and other flight attendants discussing strategies for documenting concerns about specific black pilots to create paper trails for termination. Zoe had been secretly collecting evidence of systemic discrimination for months. Elias's phone buzzed with a text from General Richardson. "Preston's financials show interesting connections to pilot training schools that have been sued for discrimination. Keep pressing. Reinforcements coming." When the executives reconvened, they found Elias transformed. He was no longer just defending himself. He was armed with evidence of a systemic problem that extended far beyond his individual case. The power dynamic had shifted. The luxury hotel suite now served as Elias's temporary command center. Zoe Williams was organizing the digital evidence. "Veronica didn't just target you, Captain," Zoe explained. "I've documented 6 other black pilots who were forced out after she filed complaints against them. It's always the same pattern. And her uncle makes sure the outcome is what she wants," added Carlos Rodriguez, a dispatcher. A knock interrupted them. It was Liam Carter, the first officer, looking relieved but anxious. "I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner," he began. "They kept me in debriefings for hours trying to get me to corroborate Veronica's story." "Did you?" Elias asked directly. "No, sir. I told them exactly what happened. Your flying was exemplary, but I don't think they were writing down everything I said." "They weren't," Zoe confirmed, showing him the heavily edited interview transcripts. "They can't do that," Liam said, shocked. "They've been doing it for years," Carlos responded. "You're taking a risk by being here," Elias observed. "Because what happened was wrong, sir." Liam straightened his posture. "I let Veronica bulldoze you because I was afraid for my own career. I won't make that mistake again." More Aerolink employees, including Illa Patel, a veteran gate agent, arrived. "It's not just Veronica," Illa explained. "She's part of an informal group that calls themselves Traditional Aviation Values. They're dedicated to keeping aviation the way it's always been, white and male." Elias's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from one of General Richardson's aides. The evidence collected in Marcus's hotel suite, now his clandestine command center, painted a chilling picture. Multiple victims of targeted harassment were identified across 3 airlines, and the Preston connection was confirmed in all cases. This was not merely the prejudice of one flight attendant. It was a coordinated, systemic effort, masterminded by a corporate insider, Walter Preston. As they mapped this conspiracy, the attack escalated. Public defamation. A tabloid article appeared, questioning Elias's military record and alleging fabricated reprimands. The details included could only have come from someone with high-level access to military personnel files. Personal vandalism. Elias's neighbor texted, "Captain, they vandalized your home in Denver. Racial slurs spray-painted on your garage door." The attack had moved from professional destruction to deeply personal racist intimidation. "They're escalating," Elias observed grimly. "They're trying to destroy my entire reputation." Elias texted General Richardson, and moments later his phone rang with the corporate area code of Aerolink CEO Andrew Phillips. Elias put the call on speaker. "Captain Thorne, this is Andrew Phillips. I understand you've had a rather difficult 48 hours. That's one way to describe it." "Mr. Phillips," Elias replied. Phillips launched into a practiced corporate response, assuring Elias he was looking into the allegations of discrimination, subtly framing the situation as unproven. "Will your investigation include Walter Preston's role in targeting minority pilots across multiple airlines?" Elias countered. A telling pause. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, Captain. Mr. Preston is a respected board member with decades of aviation experience." "Indeed. Elias replied carefully, including his financial interests in pilot training schools that have systematically excluded minority candidates. A longer pause this time. Phillips ended the call, clearly fishing for information about how much Elias knew. "He's feeling you out," Zoe observed, "trying to determine how much evidence you have." By midnight, their coalition had grown to 15 employees. Just as the others departed, Ryan texted Elias, "Being followed after leaving your hotel, black SUV, tinted windows, taking evasive action." Minutes later, Zoe's AeroLink email access was revoked. Carlos found his scheduling system login similarly disabled. "They know we're organizing," Elias concluded. "They're moving to isolate us and cut off our information sources." Elias knew they couldn't wait for slow legal channels. The surveillance and vandalism demanded an immediate public counterstrike. He met with Andrea Chen, a respected aviation journalist who had flown in specifically to meet him. "Captain Thorne, what you're describing is explosive," Andrea warned. "Are you absolutely certain you want to go public? The industry will close ranks against you." "Ms. Chen, this isn't just about saving my career anymore," Elias affirmed. "This has to stop." Within 48 hours, Andrea's article appeared in Aviation Professional Quarterly, a respected industry journal. Systematic discrimination. Alleged at major airlines. Veteran captain exposes coordinated effort to remove minority pilots. The piece was devastating, detailing the pattern of harassment, Preston's role, and the declining representation of black pilots at AeroLink. AeroLink's initial PR response was damage control, but Preston orchestrated a vicious counterattack, doctoring recordings. Selectively edited cockpit recordings from Elias's previous flights were leaked to friendly media, spliced to make him sound unprofessional and temperamental. Financial intimidation. Elias's financial records were mysteriously accessed, with subtle implications of impropriety raised about his assets, targeting allies. Zoe Williams was immediately fired for unrelated infractions. Ryan Miller faced intense pressure to sign a statement contradicting his earlier testimony, with management reminding him of his mortgage and family's medical insurance. Public opinion, initially supportive, began to waver as Preston's media campaign gained traction, attempting to transform the case from a civil rights issue into a debate about Elias's personal fitness. Preston conveyed what he considered a generous offer, a substantial financial settlement in exchange for Elias's resignation, and a non-disclosure agreement, NDA. The message was clear: take the money and disappear or we'll destroy you. Elias remembered Zoe's father, the pilots who had been pushed out, and the racial slurs on his garage door. He sent his response through his attorney. Captain Thorne rejects any settlement that includes a non-disclosure provision or requires him to withdraw his allegations. The truth is not negotiable. Preston's response was immediate and ruthless. Elias received notice that his pilot's license had been temporarily suspended, pending a psychological evaluation regarding his fitness to command an aircraft. This required significant influence within the FAA. The suspension should have been his breaking point. Instead, it reinforced his determination. He had expected escalation. Now he knew the full extent of Preston's power. In his hotel suite, Elias met with Derek Simmons, an IT security analyst at AeroLink who risked his career to help. "I've traced the access to terminal IDs used exclusively by executive-level management," Derek whispered. "Someone's been going through your records, altering data, creating false documentation retroactively." Derek provided a flash drive containing deleted emails between Veronica and her uncle, explicitly discussing efforts to maintain traditional standards in pilot hiring and promotion, a thinly veiled reference to preserving a predominantly white and male environment. Derek revealed a larger conspiracy. Preston had financial connections to 3 major pilot training academies, with suspiciously low admission rates for minority candidates. Elias divided the evidence into 3 secure packages: one for his attorney, one for the journalist Andrea Chen, and one for the Department of Transportation's Office of Civil Rights. Preston's network moved fast. Derek was immediately fired. A federal judge issued a temporary restraining order against Elias, prohibiting him from disseminating confidential information. Cease and desist letters were sent to Andrea Chen. The legal threats and professional sanctions mounted. Zoe, Ryan, and Carlos were all neutralized, fired, suspended, or placed on administrative leave. Elias's attorney delivered the harsh reality. They're using their corporate resources to bury you in legal proceedings. Most of your witnesses are being intimidated into silence. Without them, documents alone won't be enough. All appeared lost. Elias stood at his hotel window, acknowledging that the system was closing ranks. But in his military career, he had learned that the moment defeat seems certain is precisely when the most audacious strategy must be executed. The morning of the final hearing arrived. Aerolink had scheduled a conclusive review, the formal execution of Elias's career. Elias arrived at the corporate headquarters impeccably dressed in his full captain's uniform. The boardroom was arranged like a courtroom. Walter Preston occupied the central position, having flown in to personally witness Elias's professional demise. "I represent myself," Elias stated, taking his solitary seat across from the row of corporate giants. Veronica Harding entered, carrying a portfolio of documents and wearing an expression of feigned reluctance. She launched into her carefully rehearsed narrative, describing Elias as agitated, defensive, and erratic during the flight. "And this wasn't the first time you'd observed such behavior from Captain Thorne?" Preston asked leadingly. "Unfortunately, no," Veronica replied with feigned regret. "I've noted similar incidents on previous flights, though never quite as concerning as on Flight 657. Elias observed her performance with clinical detachment. The executives, seemingly convinced by her practiced professionalism, watched with quiet satisfaction. Marcus watched the assembled executives, noting how most avoided eye contact, their satisfaction evident only in their rigid posture. Only Preston watched him directly, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The smile of a man who believed victory was assured. As Veronica continued her testimony, Marcus's phone vibrated silently in his pocket. A single text message from an unknown number. "In position." Veronica had just claimed under oath that she had never targeted other minority pilots with similar accusations. The timing was perfect. "Do you have questions for Miss Harding, Captain Thorne?" Preston finally asked, clearly expecting either an emotional outburst or futile denials. "Just one," Marcus replied calmly, standing to his full height. "Ms. Harding, are you aware that this entire proceeding is being monitored by federal investigators from the Department of Transportation's Office of the Inspector General as part of an active investigation into discriminatory practices at Aerolink Airlines?" The room froze. Veronica's composure cracked visibly as her eyes darted to her uncle. "That's absurd," Preston declared, though a hint of uncertainty had entered his voice. "This is a private corporate disciplinary proceeding." "Is it?" Marcus countered. "Because for the past 3 weeks I've been working directly with federal transportation investigators, building a case about systematic discrimination against minority pilots. Everything said in this room today is being recorded as evidence in that investigation. It was a calculated risk, a masterfully delivered bluff." Elias pressed forward. "Ms. Harding, you just testified under oath that you've never targeted other minority pilots. Would you like to amend that statement before I present documentation of the 6 previous black pilots, whose careers you helped end with nearly identical tactics?" Veronica paled visibly. I never said. "I was simply reporting legitimate safety concern, like the concerns you expressed in emails to your uncle, where you explicitly discussed strategies for removing pilots who didn't fit the traditional profile of Aerolink aviators." Preston slammed his hand on the table. "This meeting is suspended pending legal consultation. Captain Thorne, you are dismissed." "Actually, I'm not," Marcus replied with quiet authority, creating the necessary pause. The boardroom door opened, interrupting Preston mid-sentence. 2 men and a woman in business attire entered, displaying federal credentials. "Walter Preston, I'm Special Agent Davis with the Department of Transportation Inspector General's Office. These are Agents Patel and Rodriguez. We're here as part of an ongoing investigation into allegations of discriminatory practices and safety protocol violations at Aerolink Airlines." The arrival of the federal agents transformed Elias's desperate bluff into a masterstroke. Preston's face flushed crimson. "This is a private corporate matter. You have no jurisdiction here." "Actually, we do," Agent Davis replied evenly. "We have warrants to seize specific records related to pilot evaluation and disciplinary procedures." Agent Patel approached Veronica. Ms. Harding, we'd like to ask you some questions about communications between you and Mr. Preston. Something in Veronica snapped. Uncle Walter only wanted to maintain standards. She blurted, tears streaming down her face. He said the quality of pilots had declined since they started pushing diversity quotas. We were just protecting the industry's traditions. The room fell silent. Veronica had just confessed to the conspiracy in front of federal agents and witnesses. Preston moved quickly to damage control. My niece is clearly distressed and confused. Then you won't mind us reviewing your communications? Agent Rodriguez replied, producing a specific warrant for Preston's company devices. In the midst of the chaos, Veronica made her final, desperate play. It was all his idea, she said loudly, pointing at her uncle. He told me which pilots to target. I was just following orders from a board member. Preston's face contorted with fury. Marcus Washington stood calmly in the center of the storm he had created, watching years of systematic discrimination finally exposed to the light. As Agent Davis approached to take his formal statement, Marcus caught a glimpse of Liam Carter, Ryan Miller in the previous part, standing just outside the boardroom door, witnessing the unfolding scene. Their eyes met, and Liam gave a slight nod of respect, a silent acknowledgement of the courage it had taken to stand against a system designed to crush individual resistance. 3 months later, Captain Elias Thorne stood in the cockpit of Aerolink Flight 1023, completing his pre-flight checks. This was Marcus's first flight as captain since the ordeal, an ordeal that had transformed not just his own career, but the landscape of commercial aviation itself. External power connected. APU starting, reported First Officer Liam Carter, who had specifically requested assignment as Elias's co-pilot. The Department of Transportation's investigation, fueled by the evidence Elias compiled and Veronica's confession, uncovered a widespread discriminatory network. Veronica Harding was fired and faced federal charges for evidence tampering and making false statements. Walter Preston resigned from Aerolink's board to focus on personal matters. His pilot training academies were now under severe scrutiny from multiple federal agencies. Aerolink Airlines was placed under a consent decree, with the Department of Transportation requiring a comprehensive overhaul of its hiring, promotion, and disciplinary procedures. External monitors now reviewed all pilot evaluations for bias. Most significantly for Elias personally, he was not merely reinstated but promoted to chief pilot for training and standards, a role that gave him direct influence over the culture and practices that would shape the airline's future. Captain Thorne, came a voice from the cabin doorway. Your coffee, black with 1 cream, exactly how you like it. The simple courtesy spoke volumes about the changing culture. As they completed final preparations, Elias checked a message from General Richardson. The President has signed the executive order establishing the Transportation Equity Commission. Your appointment as aviation sector representative will be announced next week. Well done, son. Everything all right, Captain? Liam asked. Better than all right, Ryan, Elias replied, powering down his phone. Let's fly. Aerolink 1023, you are cleared for takeoff. Runway 22. Right, came the controller's voice. Aerolink 1023, cleared for takeoff, 22, right? Elias confirmed, advancing the throttle smoothly. As the aircraft accelerated, Elias felt a profound sense of closure. The false accusation had nearly destroyed his career, but instead, it became the catalyst for industry-wide change. Zoe Williams was reinstated and now headed Aerolink's new diversity initiative. Derek Simmons, the IT specialist, received federal whistleblower protection and a new position with the FAA. The plane lifted gracefully into the air. He returned not as a victim but as a pioneer. Banking gently westward, Elias gazed out at the limitless horizon. His journey continued on a trajectory that would help ensure others faced fewer barriers pursuing the same dream. Passing through 10,000 feet, Captain, Liam reported. Beautiful day for flying. Indeed it is, First Officer Carter, Elias replied with quiet satisfaction. Indeed it is. Captain Elias Thorne's journey teaches us that systemic change rarely comes from working quietly within broken systems. Real transformation often requires brave individuals willing to challenge the status quo publicly, even at great personal risk. Elias could have taken the settlement and walked away wealthy but silent. Instead, he chose the harder path of structural reform. If this story moved you or made you think differently about workplace discrimination, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about overcoming injustice. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement to stand up for what's right. Remember, real change happens when brave individuals refuse to accept discrimination as normal. Together, we can create workplaces and communities where everyone is judged by their character and competence, not by their appearance. Thank you for watching.